Got lots of people joining us. Brynhawn da pawb. We'll just give it a minute or two for more people to come in, and then we will kick off. We are recording the session, so if you don't want to appear on the recording, please turn your cameras off. This is set to a meeting, so it's not a webinar. Usually people are hidden in webinars. So yeah, if you want to switch your cameras off, and if you can stay on mute unless we ask you to come off mute, that would be really helpful. Yeah, got more people joining us.
So also feel free to leave your cameras on, because it's always nice to see some faces.
It is nice to see faces. Absolutely. Brilliant. Got people coming in. Oh, we're up to 40 people. Cool. Okay. If everyone's happy, we'll kick off. So like I said, we are recording this session. So Brynhawn da pawb, croeso to this afternoon's webinar on building successful communities of practice. So I'm Gemma, I'm Comms Officer and Community Lead for our Communicating Digital community at CDPS. So here at CDPS, we run a number of monthly communities within specialisms, including content design, user research, service design, designing digital experiences, and as I mentioned, communicating digital transformation. We're soon to be launching a community on AI and automation, which is really exciting. While they are facilitated by CDPS, they're community owned, and the easy part is setting up a community. The difficulty comes in sustaining it. So we're looking forward to hearing from Emily today. So croeso to Emily Webber to today's webinar. She's an expert in the field of communities of practice. She's going to be covering the benefits of building communities, as well as sharing tools and strategies and helping to build successful ones. She's got an interactive presentation lined up, so if you have any questions, you're going to be asked to pop these onto Slido. So instructions are to follow. And without further ado, I'm now going to hand over to Emily. Diolch.
Hi, I'm just going to share my screen. So you should be able to see that. Can you see that, folks? Good. All right. Hello. And welcome to Building Successful Communities of Practice. It's wonderful to see you all here. So my name is Emily Webber. As mentioned, we are going to be using Slido. I will share the link again. Actually, I'll put it in the chat now as well. We'll be using this for Q&A, but I'm going to be doing some interactive stuff as we go as well. So I'll be asking you to go in there in a moment. Before I begin, I wanted to share a story with you. So this is Homer. You might recognize him. So he has I'm muted, sorry. I'm here now. All right. Good. Did you hear anything?
We heard Homer.
Okay, great. So this is Homer. All right, so Homer started a new job and he's super excited. He's going to be a delivery manager. There's lots of new possibilities, new challenges. He's going to be stretching himself. It's great. However, it's not what he thought it would be. So he's joined this new organization. He's remote and he knows there are other people that do delivery management, but he doesn't really know who they are or how to reach them. Doesn't really know how to find anything, doesn't know how things work. And his line manager is often a bit too busy to talk and isn't a delivery manager anyway, so can only help with so much. I've been in this situation. I once joined an organization. I'd gone from 40 people to joining an organization of 400 people, and finding the other people that did the same thing that I did was quite difficult to do. They were all in their teams. It wasn't really a way to meet up with them. So there's Homer in his new job, not really sure what's going on. So he decides to do what he can to work things out. So he looks around the wiki. There's so much information. It's all contradictory. A lot of it's out of date. He tries to listen into company-wide meetings, but doesn't really know what's going on, doesn't really know the company lingo. And he asks people on his team, but he's feeling a bit lost. They're not delivery managers. They don't really know where to find things. So it's all really a bit too much. He's feeling overwhelmed, unhappy, and is questioning why he joined the organisation. So it feels a bit like sink or swim, and he feels like he's sinking. So I won't ask you to put your hands up, but you know, some of you might have felt like this. Has anyone felt like this? I can't see anyone. I'm gonna see a few nods. And this isn't unusual. So when people don't feel connected, they don't do particularly well. There's some research done in 2018, which was before the pandemic, that it's called No Employee in Ireland, Loneliness and Job Performance. And it talks about the idea that when people lack the connection that they need, they don't do very well. They don't feel connected. They don't feel connected to their work. They don't feel motivated. And this happens when there's lots of moving around and they don't get to form kind of good connections with people. Okay, so today we're going to talk about communities of practice. So for the NAF transitions, it made me smile. So yeah. My name is Emily Webber. I'm an organisational consultant and community of practice expert. So with my company, Tacit. So my focus is on creating environments where people can thrive, which means that organisations can thrive. So anything from organisational structures, learning, development, capability building, ways of working, growing professions, and joining people up through communities of practice. And you can also find me at my blog, which is emilywebber.co.uk, my company website, which is hellotacit.com, and a newer website which brings together some of my work around communities of practice at communitiesofpractice.work. And I always, often when I have this logo slide here, I talk about this thing that I have a bit of a habit, and I have this habit of starting communities, like I can't help myself. On the right-hand side, some of the logos here are things that I've done that are work adjacent. So I often set up things like meetups, and one of them there's a community forum that I once set up. A couple of these that I'm still running, which Agile in the Ether and Liverpool Digital People, which kind of keeps my kind of community learning as I'm building there. And on the left-hand side is organisations that I've worked with to help embed and grow and review their communities of practice. So lots of government organisations, some private sector organisations, some across the world. And also in, oh, it's not working, 2016, I published this book called Building Successful Communities of Practice, which is some of you may have seen and is used all over the public and private sector. So this was a little while ago, and I've learned a few new things since then. So as I mentioned, this session is going to have interactive elements, and we'll be using Slido for this. We'll also be using Slido for Q&A. And we're going to have some breakout rooms towards the end, which is going to give you a bit of a chance to share about your communities or what you've been up to and what you want to do next. So I think I have put the Slido link in. I'll share that just again in a moment. But what I'd like you to do just now is have a little think. I'd like you to think about this question. So what value, and think about yourself personally, what value do you get from connecting people who care about the same thing as you? So this might be in the workplace, might be outside, might be anything. So just think about yourself personally. And I'm going to ask you to put that in Slido. I'm going to start that poll now. It should appear, and I'll re-put that link in there again. You can put as many things as you want, just how you feel about that. Just check. Gemma, if you give me a thumbs up, can you see the Slido on the screen? Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, folks, if you want to just finish up what you're writing now. See this huge enthusiasm just from what you're putting in here. Lots of shared, lots of energy, enthusiasm, sharing ideas. I love the knowing I'm not crazy, which I think is a huge aspect of having people. If you are in a role where you're the only person that does that role in your team, having some other people that you can sense check with is so important. Shared experience, yes, chance to offload and venting. Of course, sometimes we need those safe spaces to do that. Sense of belonging, validation, passion, brilliant. Okay, I'm going to move us on. So a lot of what we've put here, and I've run this exercise. Let me just stop that. I'll share that with you as well later, so you've got the answers. So I've run this exercise from lots of different, like thousands of people in different organizations around the world, and the answers are always really similar. This particular slide here has, I think it's a mixture of software engineers in Warrington and designers in Peru. And aside from the fact that some of the words are in Spanish, the same stuff comes out all the time. So inherently, you know, we all feel the same about connecting with people, which is great. So keep these in mind as we talk about communities of practice. All right, so what I'm going to talk to you about now, I'm going to talk to you about what a community of practice is. And I know that you have communities of practice, and some of you might be members of them already. So I might be talking about some stuff you already know. Some of it might be a refresher. Some of it might be new. I'm going to talk about how my approach. I'm going to talk about benefits, a bit about community maturity, a bit about conditions for success, and a bit about measuring, because I know people love talking about measuring communities of practice. And then we'll have some time to talk about what's going on with your communities and what you might do now, and some Q&A to talk about your specific experiences. Okay, so I have another question for you, which is going to help me and help you know a bit more about each other, which is what is your experience with communities of practice? So it's back to Slido. You might be picking two of these. Because there's ones about lead or members, but just give me a sense of your own experience. Put that link in there again, just in case. Brilliant. Okay, so lots of you are members of communities of practice and some community of practice leads here as well. A few of you are quite new to it, so lots of things to learn. And some of you have lots of experience, so probably have definitely some things that you can help the rest of us with. Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that. All right, back to the slides. Okay, so why we need to connect. I'm going to talk a little bit about us as humans, and actually we've already done a little bit of this because in all your answers and in everyone's answers, we inherently as humans need to connect with other humans. So we are wired to connect. There's this book called Social by Matthew Lieberman, where he talks about this inherent need to connect with other people. So we are born without the ability to look after ourselves. Some mammals are born and they can get up and walk away and, you know, feed themselves. We can't. It takes us many years. It's all to do with the size of our brains and our anatomy. And so we're unable to take care of our own physical needs. So we need other people to survive. So we need that connection to others. And that doesn't go away our entire lives. And that connection to others helps us strive and grow. So we have a fundamental need for social connection. Not only that, if anyone's familiar with Dr. Laurie Santos, who has a great, I think, free course at Harvard about happiness and a podcast as well called the Happiness Lab. She talks about this idea of just making new social connections. Talking to strangers on a train or even a coffee shop can significantly increase our positive mood. So just interacting with other people even strangers, just kind of uplifts us. And that's based on some research done in 2014 about talking to strangers on a train. And then I'm always wonder, so why do our organisations, we know all this stuff inherently, and sometimes it feels like we get into work, we forget all these things. So this is actually a social graph that I made in one organisation of a bunch of people that all worked in the same discipline as each other. And what I was doing is I was mapping out who was talking to each other. So where was information flowing? And these lines kind of indicate the kind of how many times people go to other people to get help, how many times they ask for help. And the circles indicate people, and the bigger they are, the more times people come to them. So they're like the people that hold all the knowledge. And what I saw is, even though these people, could share loads of stuff with each other, they were kind of in these little groupings. Some of them were teams, some of them were in different locations, but there was this lack of kind of these silos of knowledge, information, expertise, learning, support, work, and decision making. And you might find it yourself. There's other people either in your organisations or in organisations across Wales that might be doing similar things, and actually joining up with them would be really useful, but it just doesn't happen for various reasons. And together we can do amazing things. So back to our communities of practice. So what is a community of practice? So it was coined by social anthropologists Lafay and Wenger in the 90s. And I'm going to talk through it. So communities of practice are people connected through a shared passion for something they do and collectively improve as they interact regularly. I'm going to highlight a couple of these because I think they're important. So the first thing is connected. So communities need to have solid social connection. And without that, they're just a group of people. They have a shared passion, and a shared passion for something they do. So shared passion for something that they actively practice. So connecting around something that you care about and that you actively practice helps you collectively improve. So doing that means that you're able to raise everyone's capability together. And really importantly is this, interacting regularly. So communities of practice are people that interact regularly. So that might be, you have monthly meetings, but there are other ways that communities interact as well. So you think about community of practice as the concept, the people within them might interact in various different ways. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. All right, so I always like to show some diagrams of what that might look like. So here we've got Anita, she's a product designer, and she works in a team with people who have different roles to her, and a multidisciplinary team. I'm going to assume a lot of you work in multidisciplinary teams as well, but maybe some of you don't, and it depends. So maybe she's the same person, only person on her role that has that team. And there are other teams either in her organisation or in similar organisations who are working in different teams. So there's product designers all over the place working in different teams with different people. And maybe she's closer to some of those. So in this example, she's in the same organisation as another team. So sometimes she sees the other product designer on that team. Sometimes they talk about work, where their work overlaps. Sometimes they have coffee, talk about their common challenges. But here, actually, we've got these divides, and that can lead to silos in knowledge, information, expertise, support, work, and decision-making. So she might have questions like this. Does anyone else have the same issues as me? Where do I find ideas and approaches on how to do things? How do I kind of get better at what I do? How do I connect with other people doing similar work to me? Who do I speak to when I need help? And how can I learn from other product designers? Probably some questions that some of you have had, maybe less so if you're now in communities of practice. So back to our teams, our communities of practice help connect people that do the same thing, that practice the same thing across teams, across programs, same passions, same practices, so that they can benefit from those connections. So they might look like a team. A couple of things are really important, that they're informal. It's not a formal structure part of the organisation. It's the informal bit, people coming together informally. They're non-hierarchical, so it's not about the most senior person being in charge. They're voluntary, Any of you that have held sessions where no one turns up, you'll definitely know that you'll definitely feel that they're voluntary. But that means that they need to meet the needs of the people. They're connected, so people are a community. They're long-lived, which really helps with that ongoing connection of having people that you know, if you're moving around teams, that you kind of have your home base of people that practice the same thing as you, and they're cross-cutting. So they cross-cut, and in your case, cross-cut organisations. Someone's got a barky dog. Who's that? I've got cats fighting in the background, but you can't hear them. Okay, so and human communities can develop a sort of collective intelligence that's greater than its members' individual intelligence. And the reason for this is that we are, you know, we all have lots of different experiences, particularly if you are in different organizations. And coming together and building on top of each other's experiences is what you get kind of collaboration. And it means that you're kind of greater than the sum of your parts. So our communities of practice, I always like to get quotes from people in communities. And I hear things like this: we keep each other going, everyone is professional, insightful and emotionally supportive, which is brilliant, right? Having kindred spirits to bounce ideas off, discuss concerns or explore new ideas with is relieving and rejuvenating. So I take my better self to work after our sessions, you know, similar to some of the things that you were saying. And, you know, it's really starting to make an impact and on the confidence and capability of everyone. So that growing skills together. Hopefully some of you feel like this in your communities too. I can see a couple of nods. I can see a couple of faces. Okay, so I'm going to talk to you about the 5 benefits of communities practice and what some of that might look like in communities. So I've seen lots of benefits over the years, as I'm sure some of you have as well. And these are the ones that I kind of tend to see bubble up, particularly when we're talking about, you know, some of the things that you spoke about earlier, you know, the things that you get from communities of practice. So you might recognize some of these. So what I'm going to invite you to do, and you can think about doing this on a piece of paper, because we're going to do an interactive bit after this section, is think about how this works in your own communities. If it does, if it doesn't, then I'll be asking you to share later. So feel free to take notes. Right, 5 things, excuse me. So the first thing, and fundamentally important to a community of practice, is that they support people. So they facilitate peer-to-peer connections, giving members confidence and motivation to excel. So this is the foundation of your community of practice, these connections. And there's lots of research out there. I haven't got any in here, but there's lots of research out there around the importance of having friends and connections in the workplace. You might find that even if you don't have a community of practice, those connections already exist. So we tend to find other people, you know, we're wired to connect. We tend to seek out people with the same challenges as us to support us. So I hear people saying things, we all support each other, and any of us would do anything we could to help another member of the community. Now, I heard this from somebody that was not having a great time before the community started. And when the community had started, suddenly they had people that they really felt had their back. And it made a difference to how they felt about the organisation and how supported they felt in the organisation. So always, you know, with your community, you're always seeking ways for people to connect with each other. And that is, you know, if you don't do anything else, like that's fundamental. Those connections are everything. Once you start to build connections, all the other good stuff comes. So the second benefit is communities of practice grow capability. They accelerate individual learning and they raise the collective, I say organisational skills here, but they raise the collective skills of people in the community. And you can do this by finding time to learn together, kind of sharing ideas, learning through, you know, existing content that's out there, like training, talks, and also things like deliberate practice and feedback. So communities of practice really help with anything from more structured training, like courses, pathways, and formal training. You can take training together, you can bring people in. Deliberate practice. So deliberate practice is where you try out things in a safe environment. So I used to run a community where we had to do, facilitation was part of our role. So we used to get together and try out facilitating workshops on each other. So it's a kind of safe space to try things out before having to go and do them kind of in the real world. And then things like coaching and mentoring that you can have across your communities of practice. And then on to things like unstructured learning, sharing and peer support. So things like talking through problems, looking for ideas, bouncing things off each other, kind of, just finding ways to work through the challenges that you have. So the third thing is that communities of practice bridge knowledge. So by joining up people, ideas, knowledge and related work to reduce gaps and silos. So this is often with a community of practice where you can best show the demonstrable financial value. So you can save a lot of time through sharing knowledge. And it also helps through things like people changes. I was once working in an organization where there was an iOS, so Apple phone development teams. And they told me the story that they had this resizing problem. They couldn't get images to resize in the app. And they spent, I think they spent the whole week, the whole team spent a whole week trying to fix that problem. By the end of the week, they got there. Later on, when we'd started up the community of practice, they found out there was another team that were in the same building that had previously solved that problem. So had they been in a community of practice talking through their problems, they would have saved that entire week's worth of development. You can tell that organisation people didn't connect before that. They didn't really share with each other at all. So I like to think. So you can do this through sharing what your teams are working on, asking questions, sharing problems and answers, also things like connecting through forums and messaging platforms. So I like to think about knowledge as this iceberg. You have explicit knowledge that sits at the top, and this is the stuff that you can share kind of easily, doesn't change very often, you can write it down. It's the stuff that can actually live on things like a wiki. And under that, you have implicit knowledge or tacit knowledge, which lives in kind of culture in people's heads, and it's passed around through individuals. So finding ways for people to connect so that they can share that is really important, which is where communities of practice help. This picture here, this is a product management community of practice. Again, this was an organization where these people all worked in the same building, and at this point I'd said to them, just go and shake hands with someone you've never met before. And suddenly everyone was shaking hands. And I was like, oh, wow, this group of people have never actually met before. So people say things like they immediately linked with another product managers where we had dependencies. So this, immediate value in the fact that people actually had work that was dependent on each other. So the next reason is that communities of practice help us scale approaches. So they allow for sharing and spreading of good practices across the sector. And they're an amplifier. They help you make bigger changes than you can on your own. So if you're sharing approaches, you're sharing ways to do things, that's great. You're learning and you're creating some commonality around that. It also means that as a group of people, you can get much more done. I'm a big believer that we're really powerful in groups. Than you can on your own. So if you're trying to make a change, it can be very difficult on your own. Get a group of people around you, it's much easier. This photo as well, this was a community of practice that this was February 2020. So I think this is the last time I was in India before the pandemic hit and I couldn't go back anymore. But this was a community of practice that I had invited a similar community at the BBC in the UK to have a sharing session together. So the people on the screen are all around the UK and the people in the room are in Mumbai in India. We had this great session where people were sharing their approaches to things across organisations. And it also leads to things like this. So this is Atlassian's design system. And I'm sure some of you have examples of this as well, where a community will share approaches and create resources like this so that other people can use them. So things like playbooks, and collaborative contribution. So the fifth reason benefit from communities of practice is they help improve practices. So they create opportunities for collaboration that raise standards and quality. So we do this through, and you might have this in your communities as well, where you share challenges, you might identify common problems, and then look for opportunities to make improvements, so to create smaller working groups, or as a whole, or a couple of people going off and coming back and involving other people to share with the community. So actually creating things that that benefit members, but benefit more widely as well. So I've got some examples of this. This is an example at the Ministry of Justice. So I worked with their Agile delivery community to create Agile awareness training. And then the community went and delivered that training across the different agencies that Ministry of Justice look after. So they continued to deliver that. And it was really beneficial because it was delivered by people who worked at Ministry of Justice. It wasn't external people coming in and saying, hey, this is how you do things. You might be familiar with the GDS guidance standards and reusable components. So this is the service manual. And the great thing, if you look at the service manual, you're seeing it. I think this is an old screenshot, but you're seeing it that the pages are updated by the communities. So they're inputting it. And if you've used the design system or been involved in that, or your own kind of things that you put out there. And another thing that I worked with the community at the Land Registry around growing capability. So with the community, this was the this particular picture here is the design community. So we got together and created a collective capability plan. So how the community as a whole were going to learn. So if they used budget, where that might go, who was going to learn from each other, who could pair up. So creating something that was joined up and empowering them to learn together. So what I wanted to ask you, and you can put this in the chat window, or you put your hand up, it's up to you. I wanted to ask from your communities, are there things that you have collaborated on and created that are kind of out there giving benefit to your organisations or wider, if you've got any examples? Anyone want to share? I'm sure you have some stuff. Anyone know any examples of other communities that they're not putting their hands up about? Any training? Okay. All right. Gemma, have you got any examples?
I was just trying to think, actually, because obviously within communicating digital, we're comms professionals and we come together to talk about communicating digital change. And I'm thinking as a comms team within CDPS, we've actually developed a playbook just as a comms team. And we haven't shared it wider yet. And actually, from listening to you, I'm wondering maybe at the next communicating digital meeting, I could share it with the wider community and get some feedback, because I think it'd help me and help the comms team develop certain parts of it, because we cover all sorts. We cover like writing about digital transformation on social media, or doing a show and tell, really useful stuff. I think sometimes when you develop something internally, you're almost scared to put it out there. So I think maybe that's what we're feeling at the moment. But
yeah, definitely. Brilliant. Anyone else? There you go. Oh, what's that? One of the communities of practice. I'm a member of, got funding to undertake research. As part of the findings, this research got to create a website. Yeah, brilliant. Nice one. All right. I'll leave you, if you feel like you want to put something in the chat at some point, please do. All right, so I'm going to move us on. So I can share these slides later so you have them as well. Those 5 benefits of communities of practice that I talk about is supporting people, growing capability, bridging knowledge, scaling approaches, and improving practices. Now, just wanted to say that if you're early on in a community, you might just be supporting people right now. And that's great. That is fine. You know, you might be supporting people in growing capability, because actually you start learning quite quickly when you join up with people, and you might start bridging knowledge. You might find that some of the other things, scaling approaches and improving practices, come a bit later, and that's fine. So I would say it's not about like doing everything. It is about building those foundations and seeing what else comes. Okay, so I'm going to talk a bit about community maturity. So this might help you see where your community is in its life cycle. So this is something I originally developed when I wrote the book in 2016, and I have iterated and iterated and iterated on since then. So it's got a lot more things in it. So this is community of practice maturity, and I will talk through it. So it's based on Etienne Wenger's diagrams from Cultivating Communities of Practice. And it talks about these 4 phases of potential, maturing, and self-sustaining. Now, a community can move in different directions as new people join or things change in some way. And there can be kind of transformational phases. So it's not, it might look linear, but it's not always that linear. So I'll go through those. So potential is that a community starts as loose networks of individuals that hold the potential of becoming more. So this is, we've got an idea for something. There's a couple of people that know each other. We think there's an opportunity to start something up, but we haven't really done it yet. So at that point, the kind of focus needs to be, let's get some people together and just meet up. The next bit is forming. So forming is where members get immediate value from joining up. So what you often see then is people get together and they get really excited because they're like, oh, there's other people that do the same thing as me. That's great. And they start to build connections, learn about each other, maybe start aligning around some shared goals and purpose. So it's kind of the exciting new bit at the beginning. There's often an increase in energy levels here as the community starts to build. So at this point, community leaders play a more kind of facilitative role, just kind of helping people get together and allowing the group to form bonds. In the next bit is maturing. So this is where a community starts to grow in membership and commitment, the depth of knowledge shared, and the value of members' interactions matures. So members start to form really strong bonds, and energy of members, well, there's this bit here, which I think is really important. And this is something that when I first realized it or saw it, I was like, okay, really good to know. What tends to happen after forming is this energy dip. So everyone's got really excited about this new thing. And then it's like, okay, back to the day job and all the pressures of delivery and all the stuff that's going on. So you tend to get this energy dip. So if you've seen this happen, don't think, oh, the community is not working. It's actually really normal. I'm just going to, a couple of you have got your cameras on. Have you seen this, folks? No, good. So if that does happen, yeah, don't worry too much. So the energy of members might dip, but as the community kind of matures, it steadily grows. And then on to self-sustaining. So this is where community has enough momentum to keep itself going. Members take ownership of knowledge and practices they create and share, and the energy kind of might kind of go up and down, but it might remain generally high and experience these cycles. It's quite hard to get to that point, particularly if lots of things are changing. So, don't worry too much. There is, if you want to read more on that, there's this community of practice maturity model, which you can get from my site, which is now version 4.7. So it's changed a bit, but you can download that if you want to read a bit more. All right, so I wanted to talk to you about some conditions for success. I've talked to you a bit about why we do them, what they look like, some of the maturity. I'll talk about some things that help kind of keep them going. And it's hard to sustain community. So any of you that lead them will know, you have good bits, you have bad bits. It can feel like you've really got to keep pushing sometimes. But some of these things can help. So the first thing, some of my animations, is to build the community of practice on solid community foundations. So this is really important. It's like the connections between people is what the community is about. If you don't have that, people will kind of come and go and they won't be as committed. So build it around the needs of its members. Remember, it's voluntary, and let the community emerge. Like, be slow and deliberate about what you do to build the community. It's not about, don't stick 200 people in a room and say you're a community and expect everyone to get on with each other, because that's not going to happen. So also you need to create a sense of community. So you can't have a community of practice without community. So there's some research done in 1986 into what makes a community. And there were 4 things, and this wasn't about communities of practice, it's about any type of community. But it totally relates. So the first thing is membership. So membership is about members feeling psychologically safe and feeling like they belong to the group. It can sometimes mean about understanding where the edges of the community are. So having a clear idea who the community is for. So if it's, it might be for people practicing a thing, it might be for people interested in a thing, but being quite clear about that is useful. Influence is the next thing. So members influence the community and the community influences members. So the members have influence over the direction of the community, but also the community members speak with a common voice. The next thing is emotional connection. So people feel an emotional connection to other members in the community. That's, where you feel like, you feel emotionally connected to people. It can happen through time, it can happen through shared stories. And the last one is fulfillment of needs. So members feel rewarded in some way for their participation. So this, I talked about a community being voluntary. If people are going to turn up, it's because it's meeting their needs somehow. That might be need to be connected with people. It might be need to be supported. It might be need to grow their skills. But with that bit, it's like, it's important as you develop your community that you're checking in to see that it still is, or that you're adapting it or changing it to help meet those needs if it isn't. So really importantly is interacting regularly and doing different things when you do. So this might be things like meetings, small groups, small working groups, buddies, one-to-ones, asynchronous, different types of things. You don't have to meet face-to-face. Like, you can build communities without doing that, and I've done that before, but you have to be really deliberate if you're meeting online. So for example, I have an online community. Everyone has to have a picture of their face on Slack so people know what people look like. Different ways of meeting up, like having random coffees, so people randomly paired having a coffee, and other ways to build connections. And like these people here who are a community, that find time to have social connections. When you are meeting, now look inside and outside your environment. So look at things that are exploring your current situation, like your role in your organisation, and look for things outside that kind of expanding possibilities, expanding your mind. So some of those things for exploring, things like sharing and solving members' problems, creating better practices, so working on things that help you all, sharing your work, so show and tells, and things like community improvements. How do we make sure our community is still meeting our needs? And for expanding and looking outside, might be discussing new ideas, members as teachers, sharing learning. It might be watching and discussing talks. There's loads of talks out there. It's brilliant. They're out there for free. Watching them together is a great thing to do. Deliberately practicing new skills that you might need later on, and sharing beyond the community. So sharing with other organisations, sometimes sharing with other communities. So those 2 things, give you an opportunity to think about your own situation and your own challenges, and also, learn new things and look outside to help spark ideas for future use. I also talked about this, evolve and grow deliberately based on need. Keep checking in if things are meeting needs, and don't try and rush things. Try things out, go slowly. The other thing is with communities, people have their day job, so they're not always interacting with the community loads, so you don't want to go too fast anyway. So some of those conditions for success to think about is build the community around its members, create that sense of community, interact regularly to support each other, learn, share, collaborate, do different things when you interact. I would say on that one as well, it's not just about the meeting. There are different ways to connect with each other. Like, it's not, I know that having a regular meeting as a cadence is brilliant, but find other opportunities to connect as well. They will all strengthen the community. And align around common values, purpose and goals. And this is something you can do as an exercise with each other after your community has started forming, is talking about what it is that you might want to achieve, what your values are, what your principles are, those kind of things. Have time, encouragement, recognition and support. So this is really important, and hopefully you have this in your organisations. One of the conditions for success is that your organisation is giving you time or giving you encouragement to take part in communities of practice and understands that it's benefiting you and it's benefiting the wider organisation as well. This is a tough one. So being empowered to change things and influence your organisations and influence wider. You can do this. Sometimes you can kind of help do this by finding senior sponsors and people that can back up what you're doing and help spread it more widely. And you can do this by just showing the great things that you do. So if you're creating stuff, putting it out there so others can see it and see the impact of your work. Talked about this, evolving and growing deliberately based on need, and recognizing and celebrating contribution as well. So in your community, celebrating what people are doing, having a chance to say, this is great. Look at these fantastic things that are going on. Okay, so one more thing I wanted to talk to you about is, how do you know it's working? So this is the one where everyone wants to know, how do you measure your community of practice? So these are the things that I like to look out for. So 3 things: effectiveness for members, engagement of members, and effect on the wider system. And I will talk about what those look like. So the first one is, are members getting benefit from the community? So using these, and we're going to have a go at this in, actually I'll do this in just after I share this slide with you. So are members getting benefit from the community? So I talked about these 5 things. I talked about supporting people, growing capability, bridging knowledge, sharing approaches, and improving practices. And a great way to find out if that is happening is to ask people. So this is, is the community really fulfilling these things right now? And if it's not, what can you do about it? So I'm going to give you a chance to have a go at this. So I will start the Slido again. You should put this link here. So you should be able to see that. I can see one person is filling stuff in. So just thinking about your community, don't worry too much. Just give a quick sense of where you think your community is at. I'll just give you a couple of minutes. All right, folks, those of you that filled that in, did you find that easy? Did you find it difficult? How was that? You can put something in the chat if you want.
I found it hard, Emily.
Yeah.
I think as a community lead, I think sometimes you feel differently about your community compared to others. You know, you sort of beat yourself up when you think it isn't going well, but actually I'm very protective over it. So I was like, yeah, God, yeah, we do all of these really smiley faces. And I was thinking, no, think like a member. So yeah, I found it difficult.
Yeah. I'm gonna see if I can it's interesting. I'm just going to share some of these quick results. Obviously, you're from different communities, so it would be different. Just a couple of them. The thing is, well, that's the thing. Some great learning coming up there from that one. Again, doing good on sharing knowledge. Was interested in these ones at the end. Great, spreading good practices. And opportunities to collaborate, which I think is actually really important for you folks, because you're coming together across different organizations as well. So there's a real opportunity to join up. Who's Andrew said, yeah, there's uncertainty when the community is young, and definitely, yeah, the intent is there. And I wouldn't worry about like I might not do an effectiveness survey with a community when it's young, because you might have people going, oh, I don't know, that means that we're not doing well. And actually it doesn't matter. if you're getting value from people connecting, it's brilliant. Leave it running for a bit to see how it's doing. I find in some organizations there's pressure to say, is this adding benefit? Is it adding value? Show it. And actually that can put the wrong kind of pressure on a community. Let me just try and get back to my presentation. Yeah. Okay. So I think, did anyone else find that difficult? Anyone find it easy? So here's the thing, people will give different answers. It's almost like you knew what I was going to say, Gemma. People have different experiences. Here's a sample. This was 9 people from the same community, where the questions were, it doesn't happen, it's starting to happen, it happens sometimes, happens often, or it happens all the time, because people have different experiences from communities of practice. So it can be useful. This isn't really, it's not like it's, it can be useful to get some more insight, so you can have conversations to see where some of the gaps are, rather than being a kind of tick box thing. It can be, I found communities where some people are getting great, like it's all at the top for them, whereas others feel completely disengaged. So it's a useful indicator. So the next thing to think about is engagement. This is the thing that most people think about when they think about measuring. It's like, how many people are there? But you can think about what proportion of people regularly engage versus who you should be reaching. So it isn't just like more and more people. It's who do you think, who should you be reaching right now? How many are them? How many are you reaching? And how many are kind of taking part meaningfully in community activities? And if that isn't happening, then what can you do to address that? Communities of practice aren't about how many people can you get in them, because that really changes the dynamic. There's only so many people you can connect with meaningfully anyway. And then the third measure that you can think about, and then again, this might be a bit later on when the community is a bit more mature, is how is the community impacting the rest of the organisation or wider? So how do people from outside the community view it? Do they know it exists? How are people outside the community benefiting from the work it does? And what has the community put in place that's maybe become part of the wider ecosystem? So there's some things to think about when you're thinking about measuring your community, to see how well it's doing. So before we give you a chance to chat a bit more with each other, I just wanted to give you kind of 8 steps to get started. Many of you have started already, so for those of you who are looking to get started, get 1 or 2 people together, they're excited to make a community happen. You can do that. You don't need CDPS to do it either. You can just get on, go for it. Invite some people who want to take part. Get together regularly. Like you build trust and connections through regular interactions. Start by sharing stories. You share stories of what you're up to, your current challenges, what you're doing. You tend to find when you do that, you find that other people say, I'm doing that, or that's interesting, and it leads off in different directions. Align around common purpose and goals. You can do that as you start to form. Create opportunities to connect, learn, share, and collaborate for those different interactions. Then grow your reach in what you do and see what works and turn up the good. So if things are working, keep doing them. If things aren't working, pivot and find different things to do. So before we have you join up and have some breakout rooms and have some chats, I was using my favourite Venn diagram to decide communities of practice. So these this beaver and this duck separate from each other, but what happens when they combine is you get this magic in the middle. And I do think communities of practice are magic. Okay, so hopefully there's lots of stuff, lots of thoughts and things going around in your head. What we wanted to do is give you a chance to have a chat with each other before we get to Q&A. So we're going to get you into some breakout rooms. I think they're going to be random. I want you to think about these 3 questions. So what are your current challenges in your community? What is working well? And what might you do next? So if you're not in a community now, that's fine. Just listen to the others and talk about what you will do next. We'll give you a little bit of time, just I think 10 minutes in breakout rooms to have a chat, and then we'll come back and share. So if you've maybe if you've got someone that you want to nominate in your group to share common themes and share some of your next steps. I think Elise, are you setting up the breakout rooms?
Yeah, I will put everyone into those now.
Brilliant. And if questions pop up as well, stick them in Slido and we'll get to them in a bit.
Oh, we've got, yeah, decent 1, 2, 7 breakout rooms.
Oh, cool.
And then 1, 2, 3, 4, maximum of 6 in one. There's like 5 in another, 4 in one. So should
There's
be
3.
yeah, some decent feedback. Diolch, Elise.
No problem. I think a few people dropped off. I've set it up, but there's quite a few people in the chat saying they've got another meeting, saying for about 5 or 6 in each room.
It's the 90 minutes, isn't it? Everyone's gone,
Yeah, that hour went quickly though.
Really fast.
Yeah. I'm going to sit down.
Bring everyone back at about 10 past then, is that right, Emily?
Yeah, I think if you close the rooms about a minute earlier, then people will come back. But some engagement, people were filling in the Slido, which is good.
Yeah, I've got some questions as well.
Yeah, I'll share those I think that first exercise is always nice. The what value people get.
Yeah, I took a screen grab of that because I was like, oh, look at
Oh,
all
cool.
the big words.
Yeah, that's my it's the question I always ask at the beginning of workshops, just because it gets people in the right mode of thinking.
Yeah.
Just broadcast those questions actually.
I might jump around a few rooms, see what's what.
Did you want to go in one at all? So I didn't know because like you were like,
That's all right. I can, yeah, I might hop into room 3 because there's only 3 people in there. And I know Sean, he's part of my communicating digital community. So yeah, I might hop into room 3 now.
lovely. I'll stay here. So if there's any kind of issues, I think somebody has to stay in the main room actually.
I think everyone's back, Emily.
Yeah, it's funny that, isn't it? When you're in the breakout rooms, they close, you get like whiplash, you get pulled back into the room. Did anyone want to share a summary, some of the things that came up, some of what you might do next, or something? Yeah, something that's occurred to you.
We've talked about positives. We found communities of practice really useful for sharing knowledge, having that sense of belonging, feeling like you're not alone, so you can share those challenges that everyone goes through together, and it just brings people together, especially nowadays where everyone is working hybrid or maybe fully remote. But in terms of challenges, there were a couple of things. How to start one, how not to let it die, because the enthusiasm, as you mentioned, fades and then nothing happens. No one takes the lead per se, and then it's just there in the limbo. How to find your place in it. So having those clear expectations and parameters to figure out if this is for you, if you're getting something out of it. And from my personal perspective, another one was how to help other collaborate, help other collaborate with amongst each other. And yeah, I think those were the main points for us.
Did you have any bits you were going to do next? Or did you get to that point?
Someone mentioned about starting a group or a little community of practice. Someone else said they're going to attend some more sessions of the community of practice they are part of, and just exploring, I guess.
Yeah. It's interesting that I always think that there's sometimes if you've got a big community and you're just meeting on video, it can be quite intimidating for folks, especially if they're coming into something that is already already up and running, and you're new to it. And it can be really beneficial in communities to find ways for smaller groups to happen. So either, somebody's got a buddy, or I was thinking kind of working groups. So if you come across something that you're like, oh, it'd be great to go off and explore this further, having a group of 3 is a really good number, because it takes away that kind of mentor-mentee relationship. It also means if one person's busy, 2 people are available, and finding like smaller ways to connect, which build those connections and make it safer for people to join the big groups. Like, I'm always looking for any way for people to feel connected to each other is beneficial to the community as a whole. Anyone else have some things to share from their group?
Yeah, I think we discussed that there's a lot of communities of practice being started at the moment, but in very different ways, and the resources allocated to them are quite different as well, whether it's someone's sole job, whether it's added on to another job, and how much money have you got for speakers and stuff like that. And it'd be really interesting to know the different approaches and what's working well and what could be better. And I think as well, we were talking a lot about how things have changed since COVID, and since the book was written, and how we've lost the power of biscuits. And a lot of the facilitation techniques aren't easy to copy and paste from a face-to-face kind of meetup into a virtual arrangement, and those kind of challenges. Yeah,
it's interesting. I say that face-to-face is great and all that. I've been running Agile in the Ether since 2018, so I was doing it before the pandemic, and continued throughout. And there are people that have been part of that community the whole time and continue to be engaged. But I think there's a real, and this is the same in work in general, because we're not in the office and we don't have that kind of, you bump into someone or you see stuff on the wall, and actually you're spread across organizations anyway, so it's you're not always going to bump into people in your community in the hallway. But that idea of being really deliberate about things. So I do have so my online community meet once a month. Not everyone can make it because they keep it really small, but it is cameras on. The Slack group that we have with it is everyone has to have a profile photo, so it's like all ways to help connect people. I also do things that I think, does anyone do random coffee in their communities? Does anyone do random coffee in their organizations? No. Has anyone heard of random coffee before?
is it the same lean coffee or an agile coffee?
No, different. So lean coffee is a brilliant way to run a community meeting, actually, because every now and then, if you do lean coffee, is where you all come with your problems and you make the agenda at the start and you time box how you talk through things. Random coffee is where someone gets randomly paired with another person and you find a time to meet. And so in the community that I run, that is difficult getting people to arrange to meet. That is there's a 2-week window. You find half an hour, you work out half an hour between you to meet up and just chat about whatever. It doesn't have to be about work. It could be just, I don't know, you're having a bad day or you're having a good day or whatever. And it's what I often find, particularly when I've done it in organizations, interesting stuff comes out of it that you weren't expecting. So it's allowing the space for serendipity to happen, which you don't necessarily get when you're not in the same building. So you got a few people, random coffee, civil service might have had one, people are starting to do it. Curious coffee, lots of great. So some of you doing it, some of you aren't. It can be hard, and sometimes people aren't able to make the time, but we found in the community that I run, it just, for some people, it's a lifeline to speak to other people, and it just kind of keeps them connected to the community. But finding different things. We also have a channel called Daily Outside Photo, where people take photos outside, and it started to try and get people to go outside because we're all stuck inside at home, working from home. And so you go outside, take a photo and you share something, and it's just a way to connect people, to go, this is what I saw today, this is where I live, look at this beautiful, I'm always posting pictures of the beach, look at this beach, or look at this tree or whatever. And just kind of somebody is in Japan, so they're posting pictures of Japan. But just a lovely thing. And as it says, Kelly says in the chat, Donut is a great Slack tool. This is a Slack tool I use as well for my community. Does anyone else have something that they want to share from their group? Very quiet. Surgeries, somebody's put in the chat, Andrew's put in the chat. They're also really good. Like, bring your problems to other people to help sort out. which which is great. Okay, folks, what we will do is we've got a little bit of time, so we'll move over to Q&A, if that is cool with folks. I am going to have a look here. So you should be able to see the Q&A in Slido. I'm not gonna present it. Can you see the Q&A there, folks? Because then everyone's face disappears. Feel free to vote on other people's. If you've got any questions, put them in now. Feel free to vote up other people's as well. So it's your chance to say that you want certain things spoken about. I'm going to ask if anyone wants to come forward and ask the questions. Who wrote the first one about what's changed since I wrote the book? Anyone want to admit? I know you haven't. Not everyone's got their cameras on. Right. So thank you that you enjoy the book. So yes, it's been a while since I wrote the book. There's a few things that I would add. There's probably loads of things that I would add, and some of which I've talked about today. So things about how you might think about measuring communities. There's some work that there's a paper that I wrote a little while ago on community size and considerations around community size. So that it's something like if a community hits more than about 40 people, you start to need different engagement models, different management models. It's a different type of community. The other thing that I would probably talk about quite a bit, which I talk about on my blog, is I see quite a lot I've seen quite a lot of organisations, people putting a lot of pressure on communities of practice to deliver something for the organisation, so like to deliver on organisational goals or to be a proxy for things like training and learning and doing and career development and some of the formal stuff that a kind of formal practice provides. And so I think there's a really important distinction between that, in that a community is voluntary and people take part. You do get a lot of organisational benefit from it because people do learn, do connect, you do get shared knowledge and all those great things. But it is voluntary, so not everyone takes part. So it's not the same as the kind of formal practice. So Jill has said that's happened in her organisation. I've also seen organisations have communities of practice in place of teams that should be set up. So that real distinction of the community is about people and connections. A practice, formal practice is more about standards and career and formal learning. There's a great overlap, but there's some differences there. So I've got, there's lots of stuff, and as I said, some of the stuff that you would see today, and every now and then I sit down to rewrite it, and I haven't yet because it's a lot of effort. Okay. Okay, so the next question I've got up here is, how do you help the mind shift from standard agendaed meeting with actions to being a community and aid that sense of ownership? Does somebody want to, if anyone's camera's on, that said that? Who asked that question?
Yeah, that would be mine.
Okay.
In my community is very, very niche.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only open to people in quite senior positions who are so used to just going to a meeting that's agendaed, speaking occasionally, taking actions, and hats change in between every meeting. And they're doing fantastic. I love my community members. They're amazing. But it's a very difficult shift, isn't it? When you've built a career and you're so used to this way of doing things and you're in such a busy day job, it is quite a mental shift, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think there's probably, and it might, I think it's probably about experimenting with some things to ask people to try stuff out. So what you could do is you could potentially split your meeting in half and say, we're going to have some agenda stuff at this bit, and then we're going to have some open space, and it's going to be facilitated, it's going to be guided. I think the other thing that can be really useful to get people engaged and to share what they have. As I've run a session before, I get people to talk about what is it you'd like to learn, and what is it that you can what is it that you can share with each other, with other people. And so you kind of get a whole bunch of stuff where people are like, these are things that these are things I'd like to know more about, and these are things that I can bring to the table. And you can use that to say, oh, let's have some sessions around that, and we'll have those a little bit more open, or use tools like Lean Coffee, where it's like it's structured, but it's a little bit more unstructured. So with a group like that, I would kind of probably dip my toe in the water a bit and try out some different approaches with them, but with some not a complete free-for-all, let's just turn up and chat about whatever. Have a little bit of structure around it, but not too much. I hope that's helpful.
No, that's brilliant, 'cause that's exactly what I've been doing.
Brilliant. Is it working?
Yeah, it is working really well. But it's still quite new, so it is trialing different things.
Yeah, I think it's back to that thing. I think where we act like humans when we're outside work, and then sometimes we go into work and we go, oh no, we need an agenda. It's like, you don't need an agenda when you go around your friend's house. But yeah, we forget about it sometimes. Cool. Next question is, how do you facilitate random curious coffee with a digital community? Now, who was talking about donut?
I've asked that question because I would be really, when you said the likes of donut and stuff, that's all very, very new to me. So I would love to know how that's facilitated. Immediately, I'm thinking like, is it an open forum, like an MS Teams forum? Sorry, there's a cat going mad beside me. Like, is it an MS Teams forum where people can ask and then you do like the matching up or the pairing, or what? I'd love to just know a bit more.
So that personally, I use, our community uses Slack, and there's a plugin on Slack that does it for you. It pairs people up randomly as long as they're part of a certain channel on a kind of cadence that you decide, and then it reminds them and all that kind of stuff. I don't know, does anyone know of any in Teams that does something similar? The other option is just to get people's names and randomize it. And
I was thinking that maybe just like an MS Teams form, and people can express an interest in taking part. And then, because I think with my community, it's all different organizations. So it would be organizational to organizational connections. Or Secret Santa tool, that's a really good.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think although it might end up giving them different people, not pairing the same people up if it's Secret Santa. I think the thing to be, and this is what I think one of the things that I've learned, so sometimes people don't know what to expect and don't know what they need to do when they get there. So it can be useful to give people a little bit of guidance, like this is all the time you need to commit to it. This is what you're going to be doing. And maybe here's some questions that you can ask to start the ball rolling. So you're giving people something that they're not just kind of jumping in and sitting, staring at another person and not knowing what to say, which can put people off. Yeah, give it a go. Be interested to know how it goes. I think we've got time for another one. Just an easy one, which is how to sustain a community of practice, which is the really hard one. I think this is the hard one, and I think a lot of it is around if you've built those deep connections, then that's your best bet for sustaining a community of practice. Mixing up what you do when you meet is another good thing. Like if everyone is doing the same thing every time they get together, it can get really dry. So if you're getting together and moaning about everything, that could get really bad. So if you are, learning new things, learning off each other, solving problems, doing all those different things, that can really help. I would always find time to get together as well. So I say that, and so I run a virtual community, but if you can find opportunities for people to meet face to face and build those connections will help sustain the community. And if you can help understand what people's needs are, and meet those. So I would recommend that as part of your community practice, you do kind of a retrospective, find out how people are feeling about it, find out ideas for improving it, get the community involved in trying out new things. So like if you want to start a random coffee, some people from the community start it. If you want to try go and visit a place, some people from the community set that up. So getting people involved and engaged in that way, and understanding that it will go through kind of peaks and troughs, and sometimes you may have only a few people turning up, but if those few people are getting value from it, that's brilliant, that's valuable. And just keep going, I think, is what I'd recommend. I think we are at time, and I'm sure you've all got the meeting.
Yeah, that hour and a half went super quick for me. I don't know, I've blinked and it's 3:30, and we've had 32 people stay on right to the very end, so diolch yn fawr people. I'm looking forward to following up with a few individuals just to chat really, and just to share more ideas and maybe support each other, especially community leads. But we'll send you a follow-up email with a link to the recording. Huge thank you to Emily for this afternoon. Hopefully you've all got a lot out of it. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, everybody, and diolch. Speak soon.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thank you.